Gettysburg, a small town situated in Adams County, Pennsylvania, is home to the bloodiest battle on American soil. Over the course of 3 days, there were over 50,000 casualties across 6,000 acres of battlefield. The Battle of Gettysburg was one of the most significant battles in the Civil War, and it served as a turning point for the war. Over the next day and a half, I will spend time exploring the famous battle sites, talking to locals to understand what life is currently like in Gettysburg, and I will try to educate myself on what exactly took place on July 1st through July 3rd, 1863.
Oh, hey there. Welcome to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I finally made it out here after about 3.5 hours of driving. This is called Lincoln Square right here. But yeah, while I was driving today, I was about 20 minutes out from here, and unfortunately, it's snowing today, as you can see. Yep, snow on the ground right there, snow on some of these buildings. Looks pretty cool, but as I was driving, there was a snow vehicle like right in front of me dropping salt off, and it was probably going 20 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour street that I was supposed to be on for the next 25 miles. So safe to say it took about an extra 40-ish minutes to get here. But I am super excited to be here in Gettysburg because it is one of the most historic cities in all of America. It's famous for the Battle of Gettysburg, which actually had the most casualties out of any battle ever on American soil. And so the battlefield's the main draw here, but right now, like I said earlier, I'm in a place called Lincoln Square, and basically this is just the historic downtown district for Gettysburg. And then right next to this ghost tour shop, we actually have the Wills House right here. And as we can see, this was where Abraham Lincoln completed, I don't know if you can read that, but this is where Abraham Lincoln completed the Gettysburg Address. So hopefully you guys remember that one from your history classes. That's one of the few things I can actually remember. I'm also interested in hearing the stories of some locals on how it is actually living in such a historic place. So maybe if I'm feeling social enough, I'll talk to some locals. There's actually so many people in that Lincoln Square area, and now I went more outside that to see if I could find some locals, and there's just nobody walking on any of these streets. Now granted, it is about 17 degrees outside, so maybe I'm the crazy one. I just kept walking, and now I am officially getting my very first glimpse at the historic Gettysburg battlefield right here. This is called Culp's Hill. First thing I just want to ask you, sir, is how long have you been in the area for?
Well, I've lived in Gettysburg now for almost 2 years. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I came back to Pennsylvania almost 4 years ago.
Okay. And then what kind of prompted that change to want you to come back?
I've always been into the Civil War, very obsessed with the Civil War, Lincoln, just history from a very young age. So I would come here a lot. You know, I lived in Columbus and the suburbs of Columbus, so I'd always come over here, and every time I would leave, I would feel sad and wish I could live here. And so about 2010, I made the decision that I want to live out my life here in Gettysburg. So it worked out.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So have you kind of seen like a change in the area since you've kind of been around like Civil War areas like in Pennsylvania? Have you kind of seen like a change in how the town has been over the past couple of years? Or?
Well, starting in the 1990s, the Park Service, I think it was the 90s, actually it was earlier than, I think it was the 80s, going into the 80s, the Park Service started making an effort to buy up land and to reduce the commercialism of the town. So if you go back like 40 years or more, commercialism here has been reduced because the Park Service has reclaimed land. I mean, a lot of people that come here don't realize that, there was like a bar up on top of Culp, on Little Round Top, and there were businesses just lining coming in. And
That's crazy.
At that time, they had money to do that. Now it's the Battlefield Trust, which is a nonprofit organization that's mission is to preserve Civil War and Revolutionary War battle sites.
That's awesome.
That will buy it and control it, and usually eventually turn it over to the Park Service.
That's awesome. So literally just used to be like on top of a battlefield, just bars, and people could...
Right, and they had a trolley line that ran across,
crazy.
the late 19th century, early 20th century, that ran, through the battlefield up to Little Round Top. Yeah.
How did the locals feel about like when they stopped like so much commercialism and they kind of made that trust? Were they kind of like on board with that, or was that like was that more for touristy type of people to go to those bars, or was that more for like locals, going to those bars?
Probably both. I would say probably both. I think, it's a mix of things. This is, the whole town was a battlefield, so you can't preserve the whole town. It'll never be the way it was during the battle. But there's always been this tension between, hey, this is a functional community and people have to live and work and make a living, versus historical preservation. But I think now a lot of older people like myself, I'm not yet a retiree, but people are retiring here, and they're more into history, so they like the preservation aspect, so it's less commercial. But this town is dependent on tourism.
Yeah.
For
so it's like a hard mix, right? It's like you got to balance
there's
both.
Always going to be a tension, always going to be a battle of how much development versus how much preservation. But probably most of the older folks here would like to see it preserved.
Yeah.
Because it's a major historic site.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last question. What is your favorite spot to go to in Gettysburg? Could be like underrated, or if it's like a more well-known attraction. Like, what's one thing I can't miss?
In terms of like restaurants or just the battlefield itself?
Let's do the battlefield.
Well, I mean, I live within walking distance here of Culp's Hill, and I like walking Culp's Hill. This is not one of the most traveled parts of the battlefield. This is, people will come here. But
I feel like a lot of the other places you got to drive out of the main historic downtown district,
well, it's
right?
going to be day 2 and day 3 of the battle. It's going to be over there where Pickett's Charge was, up over the hill there. Where the Lee Monument is, going down West Confederate Avenue, and then over across on Hancock Avenue where the Meade Monument is. That's probably where most of the people, and maybe the day 1 where the Peace Monument is. But in terms of walking, I think Culp's Hill is fun because you get hills.
This is beautiful. And then is that a school up there that they just?
This is the junior elementary school is across the street, and this is the junior high. This used to be the junior senior high school, but they built a big high school on 15, the business route going outside of town. And this is the time of the year to come because the foliage is down and you get a better sense of what it was like during the battle. When you come here in the summer, you don't have the sight lines that you would have now. So going up in the cupola, you'll be able to see back
everything,
over this way better.
all the trees.
Because you'd get like west and you'd get north and you'd get like northeast, but you don't really get over toward this way when the foliage is all up.
Awesome, sir. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Right.
That was really cool getting to talk to Alan about Gettysburg. I could just see how passionate he was about this place. And so, yeah, right now I'm actually checking out his recommendation for me right here, Culp's Hill. Now, before I start explaining the significance of this place, I want to preface by saying I'm not the most knowledgeable in history, but I'm gonna try. So the significance of Culp's Hill is that it formed the right flank of the Union's defense line during the Battle of Gettysburg, and a spontaneous attack by the Confederate on day 2 of the Battle of Gettysburg led to a very prolonged and bloody battle here on the Culp, but ultimately the Union, or the North, was able to secure a victory and just keep this part of the land occupied by the Union. So as I'm walking along Culp's Hill here, I see off into the distance an observatory tower. It looks pretty far away. I put it in the walking distance, and there actually is an observatory tower on Culp's Hill. So it looks so cool. It's about 2 miles away. I'm just really hoping it's about 1 mile away, sorry. But I'm really hoping that it's open, because if I walked all the way, it's like way over there in the distance. If I walk all the way over there and it's not open, that would be quite unfortunate. It's frozen. It's currently telling me to, to go right in here. All right, well, I see this might be a trail here. I don't really know. I feel like this can't be the actual trail, but it's having me connect to another road up here. I guess I'll just walk this for a second. Oh my gosh. Well, I wish I could say I did that on purpose. All right, well, I have made my way somewhere. I see we got a couple monuments right here. Wow, this is gonna be a slippery rock. Don't really wanna go up that way. But we have some monuments up here. So curious to check out what these are. So these look like they are infantry monuments right here. And we made it back to some road here too. We have another cool looking monument right here, which it looks like the bald eagle is on top of. This looks like this is for the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania infantry little monument right here. All right, looks like we are on this road for about 10 more minutes and then we'll get up to the observation tower. I've noticed that on this road that I'm gonna be walking on, there are a ton of different monuments set up around this area. So interested to check out all of those. Alrighty, we have made it to the top of Culp's Hill. There's the observation deck right there. Very excited to go up to the top and get just a huge overview of the whole battlefield where the Confederate tried to take over Culp's Hill from the Union. It must have just got significantly warmer out here because I'm walking up this observatory deck and like a ton of ice is melting and a ton of water is just dripping all over me. So yeah, earlier today we were in the historic downtown at Gettysburg and then we followed this road right here. This was the entrance of Culp's Hill and we followed this road all the way over until here and then we kind of split off, went in the snow a little bit into the forest and then we connected somehow to a street over there and now we're in the observatory tower. But this just provides great views of the battlefields and then also the town right there. Very cool to get a great sight line of a lot of the major stuff that happened during the Battle of Gettysburg. The battlefield, I forget if I said this earlier, but it was like 24 miles long or something like that. So this battlefield is massive. And so to be able to come up here in an observatory tower and, you know, see a lot of it is very neat. Alrighty, I am going down now. All right, so now walking down from the top of Culp's Hill and we are about 1.5 miles away from anything right now. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to walk basically. But on the way back to downtown, there is the Gettysburg National Cemetery. And this cemetery is actually where Abraham Lincoln gave his famous Gettysburg Address after the Civil War, reflecting on all the battle that happened. All right, so we got the Gettysburg National Cemetery over there. And then over here we have East Cemetery Hill. And fighting happened here on July 2nd, which was day 2 of the Battle of Gettysburg. So I thought this was the Gettysburg National Cemetery, but it's actually the Evergreen Cemetery. And the Gettysburg National Cemetery, it's just about another like mile or so walk up this way. It's pretty surreal being this close to a cannon. All right, this is gonna be a dumb question. All right, don't judge me if I'm wrong here, but these are real, right? They didn't just recreate them just to put them here. I'm assuming, yeah, these were all probably where the actual cannons were during the war. Yeah, because look at that, there's some cannons up there and then there's a big hill where some of the battles were fought there. So really cool how they kept the cannons, you know, on the properties here, right? So you can kind of see, you know, where were people fighting, what direction, stuff like that. right, just got out of the Gettysburg National Cemetery. As you can see, it got a lot brighter outside. But anyways, it's interesting because they actually don't know the exact location where Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. After trying to look it up, I discovered that it's still kind of under investigation by several people who are trying to figure out exactly where he gave his Gettysburg Address. We are now approaching the Jennie House, which is a historic museum dedicated to Mary Virginia Jennie Wade, who was the only civilian that died in the Battle of Gettysburg. So I've got an hour to kill, so I'm gonna head back into the historic downtown square area, maybe try to grab some food there. So to be honest, all the restaurants in that square area looked kind of more like sit-down restaurants, so I couldn't really find anything really quick to eat. So I do have a couple bars in my backpack, so that's gonna have to do. All right, yes, great lunch right here. But anyways, now I'm going to a very special attraction here in Gettysburg, which is the Cupola tour and the Seminary Ridge Museum. So a day before the Battle of Gettysburg started, General John Buford of the Union went into the Cupola, and he basically saw Confederate troops in the west, and he knew battle was near. And basically from this cupola, he was able to strategize an initial kind of battle plan of how he was going to help the Union defend against the oncoming Confederate attacks. And the seminary building actually played a key role in the Battle of Gettysburg too, as it served as a field hospital for soldiers. So yeah, both of those are in the same place, so going to head over there now. All right, we have arrived at the Seminary Ridge Museum, and also the cupola is up there as well. And this is right next to, they got a Lutheran church over there, and then just some more of the battlefield, which will get a great vantage point when we go to the top of the cupola.
Hello, it's voiceover Bryce here, and we're going to start our ascent up to the cupola. And first we had to stop by this attic right here. And fun fact, they actually host escape rooms in this attic during certain times of the year, like an escape room in here. Yeah, that would go pretty hard. But then it was time to take the final set of stairs before getting to the cupola. And now, boom, right before my eyes is what General John Buford saw. Yeah, you really can't beat this vantage point right here. You can see the battlefield going on for miles, and especially like Alan was saying earlier in the video, with it being winter and the trees not having leaves on them, you can see so much more of the battlefield. And then right to the right here, you see the Lutheran church, and then also from the cupola, you get a great vantage point of the town of Gettysburg itself. This is a really cool thing to do here in Gettysburg, and the tour guides themselves are super smart and super knowledgeable. Look at that smile. He's having a good time.
The cupola tour was actually so cool. Got to go up into the attic and then up out into the cupola. Really cool experience getting to see kind of what John Buford saw that day. He saw the Confederate troops approaching. So now we're on the 4th floor of the Seminary Ridge Museum. And yeah, gonna make our way down and do some museum exploration. One of the most interesting things about Gettysburg is that wherever, if you're around the town area, wherever you look, there is probably some massive monument dedicated to the soldiers that fought in the Battle of Gettysburg, or just in the Civil War in general. Out of all the state monuments that they have here in Gettysburg, I'm pretty sure that the Pennsylvania one is the biggest. I mean, that would make sense because Gettysburg is in Pennsylvania. If you didn't know that, it's okay actually. But anyways, yeah, this thing is huge for a state monument here. Very beautiful. But yeah, dedicated to all the soldiers from Pennsylvania who fought in these wars. And then pretty much all around the whole monument here, we just have vast battlefields. It's golden hour out here in Gettysburg. And with that being said, the park where all the battlefields are in, this does close at sunset, so I do not have too much more time remaining to explore the battlefields today, but I'm hoping to hit up one more spot before the battlefields close, and that is the Angle. And it's sometimes referred to as the Bloody Angle because a ton of people died at this battlefield site. So the Angle, or the Bloody Angle, was actually the focal battle site for the famous Pickett's Charge, which this was a massive Confederate offensive attack to try to break through the Union line. And the Confederate was able to briefly break through the Union line, but then they just got absolutely slaughtered after they broke through the initial Union line. And this was actually the last major battle in the Battle of Gettysburg. And I've just arrived at the Angle, which is defined by this zigzag of rock here. And so yeah, this is basically where the Battle of the Gettysburg pretty much ended, because after Pickett's Charge, which was fought right here and then in these fields off into the distance, after this, the Confederate Army retreated and the Battle of Gettysburg was complete. So the Union soldiers used this zigzag rock formation as cover for the Confederates that were coming at them. Yeah, this is super cool. I've been walking now for about 5 minutes, and just all down this line at the Angle, it's all this zigzag rock. What a lot of people do when visiting the Battle of Gettysburg battle sites is they do a chronological tour of all the battle sites. You know, they go to the battles at day 1, the battles at day 2, the battles at day 3, and then typically they'll end here because, you know, the Angle, this is Pickett's Charge, right? This is where the Battle of Gettysburg pretty much ended. And yet here I am, this is only like the 3rd battle site I've seen, and I'm not doing it in order, which now that I think about it, I probably should have done it in order. That probably would have made more sense. But we're here anyways. I have made my way to the field where Pickett's Charge was fought, and it's just kind of crazy standing here because so many people fought and died in literally this exact spot where I am standing right now. On the Confederate side, they had 12.5 thousand troops that they sent over to try to break the Union line over there by the Angle. So after Pickett's Charge, it was determined that 28,000 Confederate troops and about 23,000 Union troops were either killed, wounded, or went missing in the fighting at Gettysburg. And with that, the Battle of Gettysburg is actually the deadliest battle that was ever fought on American soil. I made it back to my car. Now I'm gonna drive back into the town of Gettysburg to eat. If you've watched this video, you know that I had to skip lunch. I literally had a bar that was like 100 calories. So I am starving. I have not eaten anything since I left this morning it's been since 5:30 a.m. unfortunately. So super excited to grab some food. I'm grabbing it at a very, very, very historic place here in Gettysburg called the Dobbin House. And actually the Dobbin House is the oldest building or structure in Gettysburg. So you know that's pretty historic. Guys, I might not be eating at the Dobbin House. It is absolutely slammed right now. So I have no idea what the inside looks like, but just judging by the parking lot, yeah, it might be kind of tough. Dang, yeah, the Dobbin House right here was built in 1776, and during the Battle of Gettysburg, this building also served as a hospital for the soldiers. So just checked into the Dobbin House Tavern wait list, and it's gonna be about a 35-minute wait or so. They have a gift shop in here, so I'm just gonna explore around here, I guess, until they're ready to seat me. Well, I think what I'm gonna do. That gift shop was mad boring, so, well, it wasn't boring. It was just small. So instead of just waiting in there for 30 minutes, I'm gonna explore some more of the historic downtown district of Gettysburg. I'm in the southwest tip of the historic downtown district. So just gonna walk around here, explore here a bit. It is like dead here. I'm sure there's more people in the Lincoln Square part of downtown, which is a little bit more north, but in the southwest tip, besides the Dobbin House, there's like no one out here. Yeah, I'm just heading back to the restaurant and gift shop. Somehow that's probably more entertaining than walking down the street. Ah, perfect. My table is ready. Just finished up at the Dobbin House. I got the Mile High sandwich, and I'm not gonna lie, that name is pretty accurate. When I got to the Dobbin House, I was just sitting up at the bar, and I was talking to the guy next to me, and he was a regular at the Dobbin House. So his name was Mike, and I was like, all right, Mike, what do I get to eat, man? And he's like, you got to get the Mile High sandwich. And I got it, and like I said, it was really, really good. We talked about a lot of things at the bar, me and Mike, but one thing that we did talk about toward the end, but right before I left, was that he actually used to do the Civil War Gettysburg Battle of Gettysburg reenactments. And if you're not familiar with this, pretty much every year, I think they've been doing this for a really long time, around the 4th of July period, a group of a ton of different people come together and they do a reenactment of the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, before I go back to my hotel room for the night, I want to go back to the historic Gettysburg downtown area, and I basically want to see if it's any more active than all of this that I just walked past. Because like I was saying, in the surrounding area of the Dobbin House, there was like really nothing going on. It looked like nothing was even open either. So I guess it's a little more lively here. They have a bar over there open, and then there's a pub that's open over there. Look at this, they even got a little bit of Christmas lights here. All right, heading back to my car, and we're back in like the total darkness. Once you get outside of Lincoln Square, out of Gettysburg, like it's like super eerie and a little scary, I'm not gonna lie, walking out here by myself on this night. Now there's a Gettysburg brewery. Alrighty, that's gonna conclude day 1 of Gettysburg, unless I find something cool at my hotel that I want to show you, but that's probably not gonna happen. Anyways, tomorrow morning, we're starting bright and early. We're getting up for Mass. Even on vacation, yes, we are still going to Mass. So looking forward to that. It's back at the downtown Gettysburg district. And after that, I'm going to explore a lot of the battlefield tomorrow and go to the visitor center with the museum. Good morning, everyone. Just started the day off right. Got up and went into the downtown square again and went to Mass this morning. Beautiful church right in the basically center of downtown area. But now I'm at the Gettysburg Visitor Center. And low-key, this should probably be the first stop when you come to Gettysburg. But unfortunately, I just couldn't allocate enough time to it yesterday because you have a world-class museum that kind of introduces you to the Battle of Gettysburg. And then you have the famous, which I'm really excited to see this, the famous cyclorama. And this is a huge painting, a panoramic painting. I was reading something that's like 340 feet long, like 40 feet tall. Like that's actually insane. But it's a huge panoramic of Pickett's charge, which was on the last day of battle at the angle that we saw yesterday. And then lastly, they have a narration by Morgan Freeman, thank you, by Morgan Freeman on the Battle of Gettysburg. Every time I see my boy Abraham Lincoln, I gotta come over and take a selfie with him. All right, just made my way into the visitor center entrance here. Gonna buy my ticket for the museum and then enter the museum.
From the fighting on the first day of battle.
Just got out of the Battle of Gettysburg Museum, and
This museum is really big. It starts even before the Civil War started, you know, kind of going over the causes of the Civil War and slavery. And then it goes to like Lincoln's election as president and then the start of the Civil War. And then it goes through each day of the Battle of Gettysburg. So starting off with day 1, then going over the details of day 2, and then jumping into the details of the last and final day 3. And then it kind of brings you to another section of the museum where you kind of see what Gettysburg was like after the war, obviously with over 7,000 people dying, which is more than 3 times the amount of people that lived in Gettysburg at the time. The town was vastly different, and so many buildings and businesses and stuff got destroyed, so Gettysburg really had to like rebuild. So they kind of showcase that. And then there's a section for Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg address after that, and then some of the final sections are kind of going more into like the civil rights movement and stuff like that that happened after the Civil War actually ended. And now it is time to watch the Morgan Freeman film on the Battle of Gettysburg. So you go right into the cyclorama room after the film, and that painting, that canvas is absolutely unbelievable. I've never seen a painting even close to that size, and it's like a whole 360 painting. It goes around the whole room, encapsulates a ton of the fighting that happened at Pickett's Charge. And I don't know if they usually do this, but they were doing a light and sound show on the canvas itself, so they kind of went through the Pickett's Charge battle and kind of lit up where cannons were firing off, and you know, where it was kind of starting, and you know, where the battle ultimately ended. So that was really cool to see that. And then after the sound and light show, they just light up the whole or not light up the painting, they just turn the lights on and you could see the full painting. And it's honestly unbelievable because they had to transport that painting. Like, I think it started in Boston, they transported it twice in Gettysburg, so I don't know how they transport that painting around. I think they cut it into panels, but man, it is so crazy just seeing that painting and then thinking back yesterday when I was standing on the fields of Pickett's Charge, and just that painting really shows you just how many soldiers are fighting on these fields during Pickett's Charge. It's just such a surreal experience. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of itching to get back out on the battlefield, especially with all this knowledge I gained in the museum. Maybe I could do a better job at educating you guys. Will I still be historically off sometimes? Unfortunately, there's a possibility of that, but I think I have definitely upgraded my knowledge on the Battle of Gettysburg, so I think I can do a better job, maybe with the history when I get to certain spots, maybe. All right, so I'm leaving the Battle of Gettysburg Museum and Visitor Center now, and then I'm gonna make one short pit stop, and then I'm heading back to the battlefields for the rest of the day.
Dear friend.
So yesterday when I was at the Seminary Ridge Museum, I did not get to see the entirety of the second floor because I did the Cupola tour and then they closed soon after that, so I only had limited time in the museum. So I came back today to check out the second floor, which was all about faith and slavery. You know, is it against or for the Bible to own slaves? So they kind of go into that discussion within the second floor of the museum. And now it is officially time to go back to some unexplored spots on the battlefield that I did not hit yesterday. Welcome to Little Round Top. This was the left flank for the Union defense line, and the main fighting took place here on July 2nd, which was the second day of battle after the Confederates were under the assumption that the Union had actually abandoned placing soldiers here in Little Round Top, which was actually true. And so it was just a rush to get to Little Round Top. It's a great, here I can show you right here. It is great high ground, so we're right here on top of this hill, and then this is where all the fighting happened. Basically day 2 of the Battle of Gettysburg, and so both the Confederate wanted to take over the high ground from the Union, but the Union was able to get there just in time to defend Little Round Top up here. It feels like 30 degrees colder up at the top of Little Round Top, but here's the view of the surrounding area. And then off into the distance on the low ground out there, I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up, but there
are a collection of rocks and big boulders sitting out in the open over there, and that's called Devil's Den, and we're going to take a visit there afterwards. It's actually crazy to think about that. If the Union did not get there in time to defend this hill, because it was so close, like the Confederate got there just after the Union could finally occupy it and get their defense line and everything set up, the entire battle could have been changed, because high ground was one of the main reasons that the Union ultimately was able to win the battle at Gettysburg. Because the Confederate actually had a very successful day one of the Battle of Gettysburg on July 1st. They killed a lot more Union soldiers than the Union did Confederate. But the Union still held and maintained all their high ground, which gave the Union the success in days 2 and 3 of the Battle of Gettysburg. It looks like there's a little sight tower you can go up and look out into the viewpoints. This monument is for the 44th New York Infantry. Staircase is very narrow and very steep. Yeah, this staircase is not for the weak. I actually cannot believe I didn't fall down that staircase. Like, you guys don't understand how big of a success that is for me. Now I'm gonna move on to those rock formations I was talking about called Devil's Den. All right, welcome to Devil's Den. So we got these rock structures here, and it was an absolute slaughterhouse when the Confederates and Unions were fighting amongst these boulders in trying to get position on Little Round Top, which is just right up there, and that's where we just were. About 1,800 Confederate soldiers and about 800 Union soldiers died amongst these boulders. So we can walk up these stairs. We'll go in there in a second, but wow, these boulders are actually massive. So Devil's Den is actually there's a lot more boulders here than I thought. I just thought it was that main batch, but I'm still walking. And there's some over here too, out in the distance. You can cross a bridge. And it seems they just let you go on top of these boulders here. Oh, be careful not to fall. I just need to avoid any snowy logs, I guess. Man, yeah, and you can look again at the sight line, Little Round Top up there. You can just imagine. I can't even imagine like all of the soldiers that were occupying this space and just fighting on top of all these boulders. Ugh. And then even across the road, they have more boulders over here. So yeah, and like over here with the snow on top of them, those are all boulders. So yeah, there's a lot more boulders than I originally thought. And then if I had to guess, there was also a good amount of battle in this area over here. And then they have the rock formation line, kind of like we saw at the angle yesterday, set up there. So that was probably one of the Union defense lines. You can see presumably a Union cannon here that's protecting the high ground in Little Round Top up there. So we've seen the right and left flank for the Union, which were Culp's Hill and then Little Round Top. And now we're gonna head somewhere called Big Round Top. And honestly, I didn't really see much about Big Round Top in the museums or anything like that. So hopefully they have some stuff you can read to kind of learn more about that. So on my way to Big Round Top, I actually passed by the Wheatfield, which this was on my list of things that I wanted to see. And it's commonly referred to as the Bloody Wheatfield. Unfortunately, over 4,000 men and soldiers died on these wheat fields right here. It was a very bloody battle on the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. It kept going back and forth between the Union and Confederate for who held this position and who held this ground. Ultimately, the Confederate did end up getting this position after, I think it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes, but it came at the cost of about 6,000 casualties. So people either killed, wounded, or missing. I know I was kind of surprised yesterday when I saw so many different monuments and memorials on Culp's Hill, but now after visiting numerous different battlefield sites, I know that it is very common for a ton of different memorials and monuments to be built at these battle sites. And, you know, as they should be, right? Paying our respects to all the soldiers who lost their lives in what's referred to as the bloodiest battle in American history. Another thing I saw on the map was that the peach orchard is close by. This is another battlefield site. So gonna go there, and then I'm gonna go to Big Round Top. All right, I've made my way to the peach orchard, and you could probably guess, but this used to be a peach orchard back in the day. And on the second day of battle, once again, it was like another massacre here. The Confederates attacked the Union troops that were positioned here, and the Confederate ultimately won. And so they were able to gain this land on the second day, or gain position of the land on the second day during the Battle of Gettysburg. So I just saw that there's an observatory tower about a half-mile away that will probably give pretty good views of the entirety of the peach orchard. So I'm gonna drive over to that now. Maybe one day I'll get to Big Round Top. I don't know at this point though. Just got to the observatory tower, and just the amount of battlefield that I passed on the way here was just surreal. I mean, look it out all into the open there. That's battlefield. All right, but now it's time to go to the top of the observatory tower. All right, well, I guess I will not be doing that because it seems to be very locked. So yeah, no observatory tower for me. All right, I just crossed into the battlefield area, and just look at how much land there is here. These fields go on just so far. I mean, the whole battlefield / battle sites, it spans about 24 miles, which that's actually insane. But I mean, when you look at it like this and you see just all the open land, I mean, it makes sense that it's actually 24 miles long. So I put in Big Round Top, right? And it said you have arrived at your destination, and it was just like a bunch of roads. So I drove past it, and then about 2 minutes later, I ended up back at, this is Little Round Top. So Big Round Top and Little Round Top, I thought they were two separate hills, honestly. Well, I know nothing about Big Round Top, to be fair, but they're really close to each other. And then I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna turn around and go back to where it said Big Round Top was. But the problem is all of these roads leading up to this mountain are all one way. So it was like, if you want to drive back to Big Round Top, even though it's probably like a 5-minute walk, it's like a 20-minute drive because you have to go all the way back down the mountain and all the way around. So yeah, I'm just gonna walk. It's actually a little further than I thought. It's 0.4 miles away. So yeah, I'm gonna have to walk on all these roads now. And you want to know something? As I was driving on this road this way up to Little Round Top, I literally was pulled over and I was parked in one of these spots because it was like Big Round Top is right here. And everyone else was passing me. And so I assumed they were all going to Big Round Top. So I was like, oh, they must know something that I don't. So then I got out of this parking spot that's right here by the pedestrian walkway to Big Round Top. And I followed them. Little did I know, I went back to Little Round Top. All right, yeah, so it looks like the only way to get, at least according to my navigation, you just have to go to Big Round Top Tower Trail. and it's this snowy trail right here. Unfortunately, this is reminding me of Culp's Hill. Speaking of it, we got a snowy log right here. At least this one's skinny, so I don't have to step on it. But yeah, so I guess there's not an actual road or pathway that leads up here. You just gotta walk. I guess this is a pathway though right here, but just gotta walk all over these snowy rocks again. All right, so I'm getting close to the top of the hill, which I guess that's considered Big Round Top. But yeah, so this is the same hill that Little Round Top is on, but this is just the highest point on that hill. So this also was just, sorry, I'm like so out of breath. It's kind of steep hiking, I'm not gonna lie. But, so yeah, this area also helped form the left flank for the Union. All right, this is it. And this does seem to be significantly higher than Little Round Top. Got a very nice sun setting over there, and yeah, just fields for miles and miles over there. I'll try to see if I can get a better view, but all these trees are currently blocking all the viewpoints to all the battlefields. Yeah, this is very cool, very neat to be able to come all the way to the top of this mountain. And I might head back up for sunset. I might head back, I guess, back down to Little Round Top, because that gives you just a better vantage point without all those trees kind of blocking your view. I actually have no idea how I didn't even realize that Little Round Top and Big Round Top are on the same hill. Like, I don't know how I didn't realize when I was putting into Google Maps. I was like, this is like really close. Like, you could just walk to Little Round Top, but I guess I thought it was a whole different thing. So I basically went all the way to Little Round Top, then went back down to the battlefields, and then basically came to the exact same spot. All right, we have made it back up to Little Round Top. So you can see the sun setting over there, off into the distance. Yeah, this is pretty cool right here. Great way to end the day. Day number 2 in Gettysburg, but unfortunately I only got 2 days, so my last day here for this trip. I definitely want to come back here. There's so much that I didn't explore, even a ton of battle sites I didn't explore as well, so maybe later on in the year I'll be back. But since the sun is setting, the military park is about to close, so I'm going to head back down my stairs one more time. Last thing I'm doing before I leave Gettysburg is I'm hungry, so I want to grab some food. I'm thinking about just parking somewhere near the Lincoln Square and trying to find a restaurant there. All right, that is going to wrap up the Gettysburg exploration for the 2 days that I was here. And I gotta say, I felt a very wide range of emotions while I was here. You know, sometimes I felt at peace, like when I was walking or I was just hanging out in that park area. Other times, you know, I felt excited, like literally just 20 minutes ago, I was at that bar and grill place, and they had the football games on and everyone was having a good time. But then I gotta say, for a lot of the time that I was here, I felt it was just kind of like an eerie, uneasy feeling, especially, you know, obviously when I was walking around the battlefields, because you're literally standing in the spots where thousands of people died. And, you know, I think it hit me a little bit harder when, you know, there wasn't that many people there either, because I'm coming in January, so it's not like it's packed with tourists. You know, it's not like there was like hundreds of tours and stuff going on, right? Like, you know, some of the more popular spots, there were a decent amount of people, but some spots, like, it was just me and the gigantic battlefield that so many people fought on. And so, you know, it just gave me like a very uneasy feeling standing there. And it's, you know, sad that we had to lose so many American lives in this war. We lost in the Civil War, it was over 600,000, I'm pretty sure. And in the Battle of Gettysburg alone, we had over 50,000 casualties on both sides. But switching up the mood a little bit, I just want to say a quick piece about the people of Gettysburg. They are so passionate about their history. You know, whether it was history tour guides that were taking me on tours of places, or, you know, just locals, people that I talked to, like Alan. These people, you could just tell they're so passionate about history, so passionate about Gettysburg, and it's like so cool. I think it's one of the coolest things in the world to just hear someone talk about something they're so passionate about, because, you know, it just reminds me, you know, why it's so important to have these passions. And you can just see it when they talk, how passionate they are. And that's one of the coolest things I experienced this weekend. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to keep exploring the world, and you should keep exploring the world too.